Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Luther Harkon laughs in the faces of the gods of chaos as we have the Vampire Coast versus Chaos in this Warhammer World Championship matchup between Alrik on the Vampire Coast and zer0 commanding his beloved Chaos. So for the Vampire Coast army, let's take a quick little look at what we've got over here. We have Luther Harkon going to be rolling on him. He is going to be bringing Hornswoggle, and we do have a Vampire Fleet Captain of Vampires coming in with Taunt, Raise Dead, and Invocation of Nahek. In the sky, in support of Luther, is going to be 4 deck droppers with handguns sitting in, going to be moving right on forward, trying to punish Chaos before they're even able to make it to their own front lines. And they will have the Lamprey's Revenge as well. The Rotting Promethean's going to be Mob ROR, which does have regeneration. Nice, heavily armored crab unit with guns on its back. What more could you ask for? And then we have a Necrofex Colossus going to be rolling on in. So pretty heavy in the ranged and air force for the Vampire Coast. And up on the hill is going to be the infantry, as we do have some zombie-powered deckhand mobs sitting in the rear, going to be centered around 1 unit of Sirens, just in case Chaos hasn't brought any magic damage. But there is going to be some magic cast in their way. As we go over to what the Chaos has brought in that front line, it is going to be Chaos Marauders spread all the way across the plains, and they will be backed up by some Chaos Warriors with halberds, definitely expecting some larger units, so they will do quite well against those Rotting Prometheans. And then there is also going to be some Aspiring Champions going to be sitting in the back. They do have Encourage, and against the Undead, it can pretty much counteract that fear, but overall, it's not a unit you'll traditionally be seeing. They are very low in numbers, so they're not really going to be able to get much damage, and Encourage really isn't worth all that too much in value. And then we do have some Chaos Spawn as well, some nice Unbreakable units going to be sitting in the rear, hoping to get into not really any units to really be getting into here with the Coast Army. And for the Lord, it is going to be Prince Sigvald the Magnificent, going to be rolling right on in, as he does have, it looks like he has Slippery, he does have the Heroic Killing Blow, Standard Die, and of course he does have his Auric Armor, which does give him a nice little bit of regeneration in the fight, as he has also immune to Psychology, which is very, very important against forces that do have fear and terror prevalent in their roster, and of course Perfect Vigor as well. With his base 100 leadership, he is functionally unbreakable. Very good unit here in this matchup, as Silver Shield as well, very helpful indeed. For the mobility, it is going to be some Horsemen and Horsemasters. 1 unit of Horsemasters, 4 Horsemen. The other one has already gone off to the side here. And for spellcasting, it is going to be the Chaos Sorcerer of Fire. Going to be rolling on in. He does have Fireball, Burning Head, as well as the Scroll of Shielding to get some nice, juicy damage cast in their way. And the Scroll of Shielding will help against any sniping targets against pretty much potentially only Prince Sigvald and the Spellcaster himself, keeping them in that fight for as long as possible. Those are going to be the armies, so let's roll on into this engagement here, as the coast forces are going to be flying right overhead all of these Chaos ones. And really, this is where the Horsemen and Horsemasters really need to play their part here, is to screen out all those bats. Otherwise, they are just going to shoot up the entire Chaos force before they are even able to approach. A Fireball is going to be going the way of Luther Harkon. Might be making some nice connection, but it does look like it falls just a little behind the man himself, as he is going to be flying across the field. And he does have regeneration himself, but does make him weak to fire, so any damage is nice, but he would be able to regen quite a bit of that. And so the opening volley from all of these deck droppers with handguns does a nice bit of damage against these Horsemen, but all of the volume of fire from all of these Horsemen and Horsemasters is going to be doing quite a bit of work. But having all of these Horsemen focused on these 2 deck droppers is going to allow these 2 to pretty much have their way with whatever they want. It looks like they are going to be trying to signal out that Chaos Sorcerer of Fire, and they definitely do not want that to happen. So really, these Horsemen and Horsemasters should start pulling right on back here, trying to screen these guys out. Just need to keep their lords and heroes safe, as those are the keen sniping targets for the coast, and that's what they're going to be after. We do get a zombie powered deckhand summon, trying to just whittle down these Chaos Warriors with halberds as much as they can before they do approach. The Necrofex Colossus getting some nice shots right down the line of these Horsemen, doing a ton of damage, almost able to rout them off, but they are going to keep their leadership, at least for now. And that Chaos Sorcerer of Fire is getting pursued very heavily by all of these deck droppers, and Luther himself taking some damage, and only 1 Horseman trying to screen things out. That's just not going to be enough to do the job there. But the other 4 have been able to get rid of, or at least push back this deck drop with the handguns and do considerable damage to it. It is going to be crumbling, so unless they want to use another invocation, that thing is going to be fallen prey. As we do get another summon, though, in that front line, just going to be delaying the approach here as best they can. And it is going to tie up these Chaos Marauders and these Chaos Spawn before they are able to get into these units here. And these units on the ground here, there's not really made for stopping power. I mean, the Sirens can, and especially once, if Coast, and it does look like they are going to get rid of this Chaos Sorcerer of Fire. Just as I say that, in comes that Burning Head, so not all is lost, just as the Chaos Sorcerer is getting right on the edge of its own leadership and is getting very low in health too. It does get a Burning Head off, and that is exactly the target it needed to hit, because without that, it would have been very hard to deal with it, and it definitely could be using an invocation here from that Vampire Fleet Captain, but one has not been cast just yet. Saving that healing, and I think they are going to be looking for a nice overcasted heal here coming in, as they are going to be grouping right on up overhead the Vampire Fleet Captain, and definitely needs a heal on the Sirens, and even Luther could use a nice little top-up. Definitely is getting a little worse for wear, taking a lot of damage from all of these Horsemen, Horsemasters. I mean, he does have low armor in general. I mean, it is 80, it's nothing too ridiculous, but all the Horsemen, Horsemasters, just volume of fire doing a ton of damage, and Sigvald just tanking all the shots like a boss, and even the Chaos Sorcerer of Fire still alive and well, getting the fireball off just before he does end up routing, and a rout he does, and the shot does connect with the Vampire Fleet Captain, doing a nice bit of damage there. And it does look like we have looks like a taunt going down on these Chaos Spawn, just kind of keeping them in place, keeping them engaged with those pole arms and getting those Sirens on there as well, because that will be able to slowly pull them down, as Invocation did go down on that Sirens, getting some nice little bit of healing, and that Necrofax Colossus getting some nice shots into these Marauder Horsemen. Going to be routing them off, so multiple of the horsemen have been routed off the field. The Chaos Sorcerer of Fire getting chased off by those handguns, though one of the horsemen does come back, might be enough to peel those guys off, and Sigvald is in hot pursuit, trying to bring down the Necrofax Colossus, or at least keep its attention pinned on him, because that Necrofax isn't going to be able to do a whole lot of damage. It's not necessarily the best in melee, unlike the ROR variant, but it is able to do some nice damage, though against single entities, maybe not as much, because his shot's just not going to be finding its mark quite as well. Really, Sigvald needs to be a job for Luther Harkon here, but we are getting more and more of the Vampire infantry getting worn down, though the Lampree's Revenge is still going pretty strong. They do have the regen, so if they are able to pull away from these Chaos Warriors with Halberds and the Chaos Spawn, they should be able to get topped off nice and well, as Luther Harkon committing for the first time into melee, going to be routing off these horsemen and going to be pushing back the Horse Masters here. They've used up quite a bit of their ammunition, and generally the Horse Masters and even the Horsemen, if they've used up all their ammunition in the course of a fight, they've been able to get their value very, very well. They're very cost-efficient skirmish cav, and otherwise the handgunners still going strong, though they have quite a bit of ammunition left. The Horsemen and Horsemasters just unable to really finish them off. And with how low ammunition that Horse Masters are and how spread out the rest of them, those deck droppers with handguns are going to be doing a ton of damage, and especially if they are able to just pretty much go right over the head of Sigvald here, can get some nice damage in. But really, they do need to whittle down the Chaos Spawn, even the Chaos Warriors with Halberds. Really, the Chaos Warriors with Halberds are probably the biggest threat here to Luther and the Necrofax, in addition to the Lampree's Revenge as well. Those are really the units that need to get dealt with if Coast really wants to come back, because Luther Harkon is not really good at clearing out a bunch of infantry, and he is pretty much a duelist of the sort with that pistol, because once he is engaged, he doesn't really have the best flash attacks, so that is going to be a problem for him. And Sigvald now is going to be hunting down that Vampire Fleet Captain. A Vampire going to be keeping it on its toes as the hunt does go on. That is going to free up that Necrofax Colossus. It does stabilize its leadership. It was going to be stopping itself from crumbling here. However, the Aspiring Champions with some Chaos Spawn as well going to be in hot pursuit, as the Necrofax does turn and get a shot right into the mix of them. But all of these handguns should be able to whittle down these Chaos Spawn. They are sitting on slivers of HP, but just all of the Halberds left. I just feel like even though the bounce power is in the favor of the Vampire Coast ever so slightly, all of these Halberds is just going to be able to drag down everything that Coast has left. There is the Sirens, but that's like the only unit that Chaos doesn't really have a good answer to. And if they just get surrounded, the Sirens aren't going to be able to do a whole lot. They don't have the best base leadership in the world, as they only have like 25 right now is what I'm seeing there, 32 238 and climbing back up. But if they get surrounded, they'll just start crumbling pretty much right away. And that's really kind of the best way to deal with them at this point, especially since they don't have any magical attacks left on the field. And the Lamprey's Revenge still have a ton of ammunition themselves, as they're just able to kind of sit on the outskirts of these engagements. They can whittle down these Chaos Warriors with halberds because they don't want to be stuck in that engagement any longer than they have to. But having 3 very healthy Chaos Warriors with halberds, and let's see if there's a few units off on the fringes as well. As we have one more Chaos Horseman over here, and it looks like we have another Horseman coming up from the ravine. Coming in is the Horse Masters with just a few shots left in their quiver, but it might be just enough. And having Sigvald actually way off to the side here, alone with Luther Harkon, though all of the Chaos forces just charging down the hill and coming in support of their lord, as the horde of Chaos now descending the hill, chasing after the Vampire Fleet Captain. And just things just slowly getting whittled down, and you see that attrition taking its toll on the Vampire Coast. Balance power now in Chaos's favor, and I think, yeah, there's just way too many infantry units left, and heavily armored ones at that, with the Chaos Warriors with halberds, and just the ammunition just not enough to deal with all of these, and pretty much just even a couple of these Chaos Warriors with halberds is going to be enough to finish the job. Sigvald looks like going to be finishing off this Vampire Fleet Captain with a mighty blow, doing a ton of damage there. Looks like he's trying to get a taunt off just as she does fall to the ground, and with that, the balance power going to be shifting heavily into Chaos' favor, borderline on army losses. And even though Luther is sitting very nice in terms of health and he is regenerating, he will be forced to commit to melee at some point here, especially considering once these Lamprey's Revenge, that's going to be it for the ground units of the Vampire Coast. They have lost their casting, they have lost their summons. A final breath attack firing into the miss, but that is going to be all she wrote, I think, for the Vampire Coast, as Chaos is going to be pulling through here. There's just way too much left. Sigvald continuing to regen himself, even greater regen than Luther Harkon, as he does heal up 8 points per second versus the regen of Luther, which is base of 4. And I think that is going to be it. Almost certainly going to be hitting army losses here any second, as the last of the ground units does finally fall victim to the Chaos Horde. And now it is just those left in the sky. The last of the ammunition is going to be spent up, but I don't think there is going to be any way left for Luther or these bats to kind of carry that day. Just one of these halberd units, I think, is going to be more than enough. So let's just kind of speed things up just a little bit, as the final engagements just kind of finish right on off, and there it is. So let's take a little look at the after battle report, and we'll update the scorecard as well. Looks like we have zer0 taking game 1 of this best of 3. And now let's take a little look at how things did do. So Chaos Spawn, not necessarily doing all too well, but here is that Horse Master getting 1,200, and all the Horsemen as well, 800, 600, 800, and 500. So all of them paying for themselves, but they cost base 500. Horse Masters is 750. So very cost-effective units here, and they have plenty of nice low-armored units to be shooting into. Even Luther Harkon takes quite a beating when focused by that many units. Chaos Warriors with halberds, 1,000, 600, and 200. Even the Aspiring Champions doing some decent work, and then just, I mean, the Chaos Warriors not going to be doing all too much. And even that Chaos Sorcerer of Fire was, despite getting sniped out pretty effectively, was able to get some nice damage in with a fireball and a very juicy burning head, roasting through those Sirens, doing a ton of damage there. And even Prince Sigvald getting 1,800 himself. Now we'll take a look at Vampire Coast. Infantry just kind of there to hold. Fortunately, Sirens did take quite a bit of damage, but man, these deck droppers doing a ton of damage. 1,000 between these two, almost exactly. Actually, it is exactly the same in terms of damage value, and then 200 on those two, 500 on that one. Lamprey's Revenge doing pretty good as well. Even the Necrofex Colossus. Luther Harkon, unfortunately, though, only getting 1,400. And he is a very expensive lord as well, to be sitting up in the sky, only getting some shots off. Not really all too many cost effects of it. Really, Prince Sigvald is really good in this matchup because he is exceptionally tanky, very high armor. He has Silver Shield, and the perfect vigor, the immune to psychology, the 8 regenerating. It's just, he's such a great unit in this particular matchup against Lord Sniping, which kind of is one of the methods that Coast can try and do, which is what they did try and do in this one. But unfortunately, or fortunately for Chaos, they were able to pull through in the end. That is it for game 1. Let's roll right on into game 2. For game 2, the forest spirits have been roused to wrath against the approaching Greenskin Wa. as we have the Greenskins versus the Wood Elves. Wood Elves is going to be commanded by Alrik and zer0 will be taking the Greenskins. For the Wood Elves, front line is going to be Dryads spread all the way across that front line, and it is going to be Drycha as their lord. Drycha is going to be bringing her bound summon Rouse to Wrath, giving 2 summons of Dryads, and it is the Malevolent Dryads, so they do have Frenzy. We have the Pendulum as well, going to be roasting or going right on through those formations. Very good against kind of some of the tightly packed archer lines, or once things do get engaged in melee, it'll do very well regardless. And really the summons, though, are very, very important, as well as the Fanatical Resolve, which does give increasingly better bonuses around Drycha the more and more damage she does take. For the rest of the forces, it is going to be some Eternal Guard off in the flanks here, and in the rear we do have some Wild Riders with shields and some more Glade Riders, getting a little bit of extra mobility, and there is some more in the tree line here, some more Wild Riders and Spear Riders looking to potentially push back anything coming in through there. We do have a Spellslinger of Life as well coming in with Earthblood, really to heal up that Cav. And then it is going to be a bunch of archers. So all of these Glade Guard with Starfire Shaft, so they do have armor piercing and flaming attacks, which is really good if you are expecting potentially like Grom, for example. All of these units will be able to do a ton of damage to him if they are able to focus him down. And I mean, just the armor piercing as well against potentially like Black Orcs or just kind of anything of that nature. Just an overall well-rounded archer unit there. And then for the Greenskins, is an army that we have seen rather recently, or something very similar to it, as we will be seeing some nice rank 9 units here. And where are they exactly? They are going to be hidden here in the tree line. Rank 9 Forest Goblin Spider Riders coming on in. There's going to be some Goblin Wolf Rider archers to boot as well for some additional ranged support. Going to be sitting and some more Forest Goblin Spider Riders. So a ton of mobility here on the Greenskin side, as there's going to be some Orc Boys as well, in addition to a front line compiled up of Orc Boys. So pretty much just cheap run-of-the-mill Orc infantry. Going to be just kind of going through, and really just trying to get a nice surround off with all of the mobility that they've got, and really trying to put a ton of pressure onto those archer units. For the Lord, it is going to be Skarsnik coming on in with that Fermented Fungi and Spite of the Bad Moon. Now, the Fermented Fungi does give Rampage and a minus 24 melee defense debuff. Now, that Rampage only will take effect once they've taken a certain amount of damage. And then there's Spite of the Bad Moon, which gives a nice little bonus, which is large bonus base weapon damage and armor piercing. For the spellcasting, it is going to be an Orc Shaman. Going to be coming on in. Looks like we have Gaze of Mork as well as the Brain Burster. So Gaze of Mork, pretty much a nice little missile unit, and the Brain Burster, good against very low armored infantry units, especially the tighter pack they are, the better it will do. That is very efficient with the units from the Wood Elves. And then we have Fist of Gork, which does imbue magical damage, and then with just the prevalence of physical resist on the Wood Elf roster, it is a very useful spell to have, especially against Lost Sylvan Knights. And there's also going to be Scroll of Shielding to boot. And for a little bit of extra help in the dueling capacity is going to be a Goblin Big Boss coming in with They Needs Stabbin'. So that is going to be the armies. So let's roll on into this engagement, as that forest engagement is already underway. So kind of swing on over to there, see how things are going. Looks like we have a Pendulum going to be roasting on through all of these units, hitting those Forest Goblin Spider Riders, not doing a ton of damage to them. We also do get a Malevolent Dryad summon right into the mix of things, pinned up against these regular Dryads. Is going to be keeping those guys pinned in and doing a nice bit of damage as well. And you see their leadership getting fairly low, and then the rest of the mobility for the Wood Elves is going to be pulling back. The Eternal Guard going to be holding that line for as long as they can, while the rest of the units are going to be kind of pushing back these Goblin Wolf Rider archers, who have gotten at least temporarily into these Glade Guards with Starfire Shafts, but they will be quickly routed off by the Wild Riders, sitting very aware of their presence, and the rest of the Goblin Wolf Rider archers taking a bit of damage themselves. But there is going to be some more pressure kind of slowly pushing their way in. The Dryads are going to slowly kind of just pull back just a little bit here, just kind of keeping their distance, allowing these Glade Guard, but the Glade Guard getting a little too far ahead of themselves there, and these Wild Riders and Glade Riders going to be moving on forward to assist and kind of push them back, while the Goblin Big Boss and, just pretty much the Goblin Big Boss trying to get on top of Drycha here. He does use They Need Stabbin', but Drycha going to be coming right on in, welcoming the duel here, and is going to be pushing back that Goblin Big Boss. Another hit would be probably enough to rout it off, but that Goblin Big Boss should have the speed to make its way back at some point in the fight. all of these shots coming in, able to push back one of the Orc boys. However, the rest is still being a little bit of a threat here, though it is pretty much cheap infantry against cheap infantry. Most of this battle is going to be decided in the mobility and range department, as these Goblin Wolfrider archers really need to kind of just circle around, put some more pressure on that back line, because the quicker they can shut down all these Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts, the better off they will be. But it looks like their initial approach through the tree line was stymied rather effectively, and that is going to give the Wood Elves a much bit of a breathing room here, though all of that mobility has condensed itself back into the fight, and they are going to be looking to charge right back in as these Orc Boar Biggins going to be taking a bit of damage and paying the price for their delay. But with that unit gone, now in comes the rest of the Mobility Corps, Force Scouts Spider Riders charging on in, trying to get a nice charge off onto these Wild Riders, but these Eternal Guard are going to try and move around to screen them out, and there is another unit over here keeping those Force Scouts Spider Riders, but in comes a second Malevolent Dryad summon right into the rear, pinning these guys in just like they did before. All of these Greenskins units charge on in, get a Dryad summon right behind them, and that is going to be all she wrote for this little engagement here. The Forest Goblin Spider Riders unfortunately going to be pushing off, and especially with the charge in from the Glade Riders, there is going to be a Fermented Fungi cast on Dryka, though she hasn't lost quite enough health just yet to cause her to rampage. And she looks like she is actually dishing out the damage well enough to Skarsnik, and away goes all of these units, and the Wood Elves sitting very strong here. Greenskins just don't have enough things to shut down the rest of the Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts, and that is going to be army losses pretty soon here as we get, it looks like, a Brain Burst right into the middle of things, but it's going to be too little too late. The Wood Elves are going to take Game 2, and that will even out the series to 1-1. Let's take a little look at the after battle report and update the scorecard as well to reflect the score here going into the rubber match just after we go over all of these units. So on the Greenskin side, the Mobility Corps unfortunately did not fare as well as it did a game not too long ago. Unfortunately, the Wood Elf play was just a little bit too on point with all of those Dryad summons, especially both times they were used were to pin in pretty much like multiple units of the Greenskins. So that was a very effective use of that summon there, and just the general low leadership of the Forest Scum Spider Riders was enough to really just make sure that they got broken down fairly effectively. Nothing really doing all too well on that Greenskin side. Well, if we look over on to the Wood Elves, the Starfire Shafts doing a nice bit of work, and all of them were sitting at full health. Not a single unit got compromised throughout that entire fight, so very well played on the Wood Elf side, able to screen out everything and then make sure that they did come out on top. Really, the rest of the infantry didn't have to do all too much. It was mostly Dryads holding them back, and then with that Eternal Guard on the flanks, were able to do quite well. And then even the Wild Riders didn't really even have that much work to do. And Dryka, though, getting 1,400, the Pendulums, the Summons, and even her engaged in melee was able to fend off the Goblin Big Boss and do a nice bit of damage to Skarsnik and the Orc Shaman to boot. But that is going to be it for Game 2. We're going to roll on into Game 3, rubber match, to decide who comes out on top and gets that second point in this second group stage fight. For Game 3, the dead march in the shadow of the mountain, and the defenders of those mountain halls will be their opponent, as the Vampire Counts, led by Alrik will be facing off against the Dawi, commanded by zer0. So the series is at 1-1, so the winner of this fight will come out on top for 2 points in their group. Now for the Vampire Counts, they are going to be going very heavy in the Graveguard with great weapons, going to be sitting at 5 of those beauties. And for the support, it is going to be a Corpse Cart sitting here, just the regular variant, giving a little bit of extra melee attack and melee defense, given that Vigor Mortis plus 5 to each. And there will also be a Necromancer assisting that front line, going to be rolling in with that Forbidden Rod, Scroll of Shielding. We have Van Hell's Dance Macabre, as well as the Master of the Dead, giving a nice little bit of passive regen as well to all these units. And then for that front line, it is going to be 3 zombies, and there is also going to be some skeleton warriors on the far flanks here, a pair of each, just trying to get a surround off if they can, and then allow those Graveguard to really kind of just mow through that front line, or it's kind of slow grind for the most part. They don't really have that high damage output, but they will be damaging that high armor of the Dawi. For the Lord, it is going to be a Lamian Vampire Lord sitting up in the sky, and she is going to be bringing Invocation of the Heck, Raise Dead, and foregoing the Pendulum, which is normally why you'll usually be seeing the Lamian in this matchup, but instead we do have the Scepter of Stability, which does give 44% magic resist, and most of the Dawi units don't have magic damage, but there are a few. Grombrindle is a notable one, as is the Peak Gate Guard. They will be able to deal that magic damage, so having that Scepter of Stability, not too bad, as it is a 22-second duration with only a 60-second cooldown, so that is actually a pretty good unit if Grombrindle is on the field. And then Lightning Reflex, that plus additional speed and damage resistance, which is for pretty much all other forms of damage that will be dealt the way of the Lamian. So very good at sustaining is that Lamian, and we do have a couple of 3 Felbats up in the sky as well, just kind of help shut down things, chase things off when the time does come for that. And we have a Vargulf as well with its armor-piercing damage in melee, and it's going to be sitting nice behind this little tree in case there was going to be any artillery. But for the Dawi, won't be going heavy on the artillery, but instead we'll be going very elite for that infantry as we kind of swing on in, as they do have hammers going to be rolling on in for that front line. A pair of those in the front with the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, who do fire damage themselves. And then sitting in the center ranks is going to be a pair of Miners with blasting charges, backed up by a couple of Thunderers and a unit of Iron Drakes with the Trollhammer Torpedo, which is very good against large units. So the Dragon, the Vargulf, units like that, it'll do a ton of damage too. On the 2 flanks, it is going to be some Longbeards with great weapons, kind of help chunk through those Graveguard if they are there, which they are. And then there's going to be a couple more Hammerers in the back, so very elite units here. And the Count's going to have to be on point with their breath attacks, and just hope that those Graveguard are able to survive that initial approach against these Miners, and then see just how things go, as we do have the Master Engineer as well for the hero slot. Going to be coming in with the Ring of Thori, pretty much the Dawi version of Scabsgrath. Going to be doing a nice bit of work to the generally low armored, so against the skeletons. And even the Graveguard will do semi-decent work. And then there's going to be, of course, Grombrindle, the White Dwarf, coming in leading his forces. He does have Flash Bomb, giving a reduction to melee defense, charge speed, and speed. And he also does have Foe Seeker, giving himself a little bit extra speed, vigor. And of course, he has his default Grombrindle has no fear, giving plus 24 melee defense and unbreakable in an AoE around him. Only 1 cast of that, and that is going to be it for the armies. So let's roll on into this fight, as the Counts will be slowly marching their way forward, and the Dawi can be repositioning themselves, getting a good firing lane for their handgunners. And once those units come in, the Vargulf being very patient so far, definitely needs to be just waiting for the rest of its units to get into position, slowly getting an overall surround off of the Dawi formation, as the Lamian is kind of swinging in behind, as is all of the Felbats, just kind of looking to pull the attention of the Dawi in all locations here, as the Counts just slowly spreading themselves out. Even the Skeleton Warrior is going to be now looking to start flanking around the rear, but the opening volley for that Thunderer unit is going to be firing off into the zombies. And really, I mean, it's not really going to be doing all too much, but I mean, the Thunderers do have a nice bit of ammunition themselves. They have 21, and with how quickly, or once the Counts are able to get a nice surround in, that ammunition probably isn't going to be spent by the end of it anyways. But still, there is definitely going to be some better targets for those Thunderers to be firing in. Pretty much just leave the zombies for those Miners if you want to be using it that way, while the other Thunderer unit has found a much juicier target to be firing into, and that is going to be that Lamian Vampire Lord. And the Lamian is going to be trying to juke out as many shots as it can, but she has taken a little bit of damage so far, and the rest of the shots going to be firing on up into these Felbats, going to be peeling off as many models as they are able to with that. The other Thunder unit still able to whittle down these zombies bit by bit, as the Vargulf now can be cycling around off to the side here, using the forest for as most cover as it can, while the rest of the Dawi formation is going to be slightly repositioning as the Counts do get closer and closer. Thunderer unit just continuing to open up, doing a nice bit of damage to these Felbats, and I think the Felbats seeing that as long as they stay up there, they're just going to be taking free damage, so that they're going to be diving on in, just shutting down these Thunderers as best they can, as the rest of the Felbats also diving in. And with that comes the collapse of the Vampire Counts, with all of these units committing to melee. You're going to get a nice juicy breath attack into these hammers, taking them down below half health. And with all of these units shut down, the Iron Drakes are going to be out of the picture, at least for now. That is going to allow that Lamian to charge right on in and get a summon off to even keep them on or offline for as long as physically possible. and now that Lamian is going to have its choice and pick of this engagement, as only one of the gun units is left free to fire. The rest of the units are all going to be getting engaged here. A ton of units are actually collapsing upon this hammer unit, as now the Lamian gets a little charge into the Master Engineer, trying to get some damage in, but hasn't landed any hits just yet, as the Thunderers firing in point blank definitely need another unit to be charging there. And there is that fiery ring of Thori, going to be going right on through all those lines, as some of the Graveguard now looking to get into that back line here, but they really do need to shut down this last Thunderer unit and make sure those Iron Drakes stay offline. If those Iron Drakes get online, they're going to be able to put a major amount of damage into that Lamian, who does use lightning reflexes, as it is going to be pulling on back, as some of those Iron Drakes are able to actually connect, even firing from within this group up formation here. They are able to get some nice hits into that Lamian, taking her down a nice little bit of help, as she does have that healing that will be available to her. The Miners, again, firing into this nice tightly backed formation of the Vampire Count, but things slowly getting broken down. These Hammers taking a ton of damage from all of these Graveguard with great weapons, and the rest of these Miners getting pushed back. And now that these Thunderers are getting shut down, things not looking so great for the Dawi, as a lot of things are being shut down, though Grombrindle does pop. Grombrindle has no fear, giving everything unbreakable just as these Iron Drakes are about to get routed off, and it might be able to last just long enough to get into a better advantageous position. We are going to be seeing a second summon going right on top of those Iron Drakes, making sure that they stay bogged down in as much infantry as possible. And now it is just a mass of undead as they just continue to whittle things down, as the Lamian continues to cycle in and out of this formation. The Vargulf as well doing some nice damage here, terrifying off these Hammers, but Grombrindle is going to be in hot pursuit. But with Grombrindle getting beset on both sides by these Lamians and the Vargulf, going to be taking a bit of damage himself. He does pop Foe Seeker, up in that Vigor, and the Necromancer rolling in with that passive healing, and there is an overcasted Invocation of Nehek. Can be healing up Graveguard, it can be healing up that Vargulf and the like, but we can get a second fiery Ring of Thori. And just like the Scabscrath, though, that is definitely something you want to cast as pretty far back, as the Ring of Thori is actually a lot longer than Scabscrath, so you need to position that a lot farther away if you want the maximum damage for that ability. The Longbeards reforming their ranks, as the Necromancer, though, does get on top of these Thunderers, just kind of bogging them down again. And that is really the name of the game here, is just shut down the gun units, shut down the Thunderers or the Iron Drakes as long as possible, but they are still able to get some shots up, being in guard mode after all. And the Master Engineer slowly getting some damage, but he is able to just kind of plunk away bit by bit, using up a bit of his ammunition onto that Lamian, who has taken a lot of damage herself. And the battle is definitely too early to tell here, considering Grombrindle is unbreakable. Even if his army does break, he will stand tall to the bitter end. So all of these Graveguard with great weapons really just need to try and clear out his support as much as possible, and still have some units left to allow the Lamian and the Vargulf to just kind of cycle as best they can. Kind of odd seeing no Slayers, though, on the Dawi side, considering the Council almost usually be bringing at least some form of big unit. Though there are some that will just kind of rely more heavily on the Graveguard. Vlad isn't necessarily the worst pick in the world either, but still, I think the Dawi would definitely be missing those Slayers here, trying to deal with the Vargulf and that dragon up in the sky. And the Dawi formation just slowly getting whittled down more and more. We do have some Thunderers coming back online. There are some Bats going to be refocusing their attention onto them, as they have been able to shatter one of the Thunderers, and the other Thunderer just hasn't been remembered just quite yet. Grombrindle and the Master Engineer here now is just getting continually wrecked by these two large beasts, though Grombrindle will be able to dish out that damage very, very strongly, though without the support of his infantry, which is now getting pushed back. We have one of the Hammers, another Miner, and this unit of Hammers is getting very low themselves. All that is left around them is the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass and one of the Longbeards with great weapons. Now, they do fire damage, so they will get that bonus to that Vargulf, who is still able to keep regenerating, though you can see that health bar slowly starting to make itself known. And once again, another fiery Ring of Thori wrecking its way right on through these units, kind of just trying to whittle down as many of these zombies as possible. And really, though, the Lamian is getting kind of low. The Vampire Counts player definitely needs to be very careful of that, though the rest of their formation has finally pushed off the last of the fringe units for the Dawi. Though there is some units coming back, being chased down by some Graveguard, and even the Iron Drakes with Trollhammer torpedoes have returned, and that is going to be something that definitely needs to be handled with. There is still 11 models left, and they have a full stack of ammunition. So really, the best use or the best tools to deal with a Grombrindal here is going to be really the Vargulf and that Lamian cycle charging as much as they can. And I think the Graveguard with Great Ones would eventually be able to kind of grind it down, but Grombrindal is quite a fearsome little bugger, and he will be able to hold out until that bitter end. Well, and now the Iron Drake's finally going to be getting jumped on by these Felbaths. So those Felbaths won't be lasting all too long. Those Iron Drakes do have quite a bit of ammunition, and we still have a few more returning Dawi forces, but really Grombrindal is pretty much standing alone at this point. The Longbeards are getting very low. The Warriors Dragonfire Pass have been terrified out. They will be coming back as they do return. But they are still getting whittled down, and now even Grombrindal taking a ton of damage from that Vargulf. Balance power now heavily favored for the Vampire Counts, as just the slow grind throughout the course of this fight has definitely been advantageous for the Vampire Counts, and the Lamian and the Vargulf have pretty much been free to cycle charge as much as they can, getting all of those gun units shut down very early on, and they just haven't really been able to put that DPS into these units, and both the Lamian and the Vargulf have pretty much reached their healing caps at this point, as has even the Corpse Cart has reached his healing cap. That Necromancer giving some nice passive healing to all of these units, which cannot be looked over enough, because that passive healing has really kept all of these units just sticking around for far longer than they had any right to be. Seeing both of the Corpse Cart, the Necromancer, and even the Graveguard getting their healing caps visible on their health bar is very, very helpful. But I think at this point, Grombrindal's days are numbered. Lamian and the Vargulf just going to be taking their turns, charging in one at a time, and it is only a matter of time. And I mean, even if the Lamian falls at this point, there's no way for Grombrindal to be able to pull this one back, and that is going to be all she wrote, as Alrik pulls through and takes game 3 against zer0. So that will give him the series 2-1. But zer0 can hold his head up high. He still is able to get 1 point for the series. And hopefully, I think both of these contestants should be moving on through to the third round of the Warhammer World Championship. Both are very good players in their own right. Let's take a look at the after-battle report here, just before we do finish things up. The Iron Drakes, really unfortunate, getting shut down so early on. They were able to get a few shots in here and there through all of the zombies and the bats, but Alrik definitely on point there, keeping them shut down for as long as physically possible, and even the Thunderers not able to do all too well. And then we have the Hammerers, the elite Dawi infantry. Unfortunately, just not quite able to do well. I mean, one did get 1,000, but they are very expensive units, and it definitely needed to be doing a lot better than that to be able to kind of pull through. Longbeards with great weapons, and then even the Warriors Dragonfire Pass. Miners did all right, and Grombrindal himself getting 3k in total value. He is a very good lord. Probably one of the better ones in this matchup, pretty much for that Grombrindal has no fear, and as well as just he is unbreakable. That magic damage is very, very nice, and the Lamian, though, is a good counter to that with her Scepter of Stability. And even the Master Engineer doesn't have very high DPS, but just being able to kind of continually fire over the course of that fight definitely helped get a lot of damage on him. And I think those Fiery Rings of Thori, though, could have definitely been cast just a little bit better, maximizing their damage. I don't think it would have made a difference in the end. There was just too many Graveguard left, and that Fiery Ring of Thori doesn't do a whole lot of damage to high armored units. I mean, the Graveguard aren't exactly high armored, but they are high enough. Now for the forces of the Vampire Counts, all of the chaff infantry doing pretty much what you expect, not doing a whole lot there. None of them have the armor piercing to punch through that Dawi armor. However, the Graveguard with great weapons, that is a different story indeed. Now, these units do cost 950, so they were able to do some nice, decent work, one getting 1400, but overall some nice, steady damage throughout all of those units. And the Corpse Cart and the Necromancer, giving that additional +5 melee attack and melee defense kind of across the board for that front line was also very much helping their engagement. And the Necromancer's passive healing would be nice to see how much damage value that units heal over the course of a fight. That'd be a nice little stat to be added in addition to that damage value. And then we also have that Vargolf doing very well. Unit cost 1400 as a base, getting 2k in total value, and the bats themselves not getting a ton of value, but their utility was very, very nice on the field. And then we have the Lamian getting 2500. Pretty steady damage, nothing too outrageous there, but very well played to both sides for all 3 games. Very nice, close matches. And that is going to be all I have for you today. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to covering much more of the Warhammer World Championship as we progress through the late stages of round 2, and we'll be getting into round 3 of the group stage on, well, this group stage will end on Tuesday, or on Monday, and then we will be getting into the next group stage sometime in the next probably 2 to 3 days after this group stage ends, and then after that it will be the final playoff bracket. But that is going to be all. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good one.